Georgia State's Dell McGee says the quiet part out loud. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, we'll get to Dell McGee here in a second. Other teams we're going to look at necessary improvements. There's not that many, right? There's teams that have what they need. They need to be healthy or they need a quarterback. All right, there's not that many teams that are going to need wholesale changes for 2025, I don't think. And then Sunbelt had a pretty good night, Tuesday night, basketball-wise. Not necessarily wins, but competing with the big boys. That was for sure. All right, Dell McGee says the quiet part out loud. This was a question posed by Sam Crenshaw from 92.9 The Game in Atlanta. Our buddy Brady Weiler from GSU Panther Talk posted it. Dell McGee on what he's learned in his first season in the Sun Belt. And that's an important question because that was what Billy Napier had to find out. He needed to find out not only basically what the players were, all right, what the coaches are going to be like, and what we need to compete on this level, all right? And going through that gives you a better idea than just watching it on film, all right? But it's not only that. Dell McGee on what he's learned his first season in the Sun Belt. Other teams' facilities are a lot different than ours. That's the first thing he said. Didn't talk about the players. Talked about the facilities. Their fan bases are definitely different. We got to do a tremendous job in NIL, acquiring the right talent to overcome things that we don't have any control over here. Okay. So that, drawing the fans is not something they can control. Although, it's very interesting. Hudspeth was like this. Napier was like this. Draw a circle around Lafayette 300 miles away, and you just want to be able to people drive. You want mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and the aunts and uncles to be able to drive to the game, right? And in Lafayette, you can do that. Probably you can do that in Georgia too. Heck, you maybe even just do that around Atlanta. For Georgia State, they're in the thick of it right there. They don't need to go too far for the talent. But they are in a stadium that, you can put 25,000 fans in the stadium and it's going to look empty is the thing, right? The Cajuns at a 40,000 seat stadium, they knocked it down and it's going to be like 30 to 32 because after the first, few years of, the heydays of HUD, they went from, 28,000 to, 15,000. It never recovered under Billy Napier. It never recovered. They're doing okay this year. They only have half a stadium, but the Cajuns, the Cajuns have an athletics facility. They have, you think that indoor facility, I got there, they have an indoor facility. And that is not a small deal. I don't know if Georgia State has an indoor facility, but that's not a small deal because who didn't have an indoor facility when I got to Lafayette in 13? I don't think Florida had an indoor facility. I definitely know Miami did not have it because it took a couple of years for Miami to build it. Their first time they built it. And Coral Gables is a little tight. All right, space is valuable down there in South Florida. It was only like 70 yards. Like an indoor facility has got to be, sounds ridiculous, but it's got to be over 120 yards. And Miami's was not. Miami's was like 3/4 of a field. They finished it. It's now over 100 yards, but that's a big deal. And Dell McGee is seeing that, right? And let's see who they've played this year, where they've played, because they haven't gone on the road all that much, right? Their first 5 games were at home. They went to Marshall. They found out what the Thundering Herd has, right? Marshall has some of the most passionate fans we've got in the Sun Belt. Period. End of story. I don't know what their facilities are like, but we know their fan base is outstanding. App State, same thing. They probably have some good facilities. I know they were building the one side of the stadium out, and I'm sure they've added to their facilities. And, there may be equal fan bases like App State, but there's no better fan base in the conference than App State. And then they're just coming off a big loss at JMU. Same thing, right? JMU has half this great looking stadium, and then the other half looks like it's Division III or high school. And I know they're trying to decide, how to improve that and raise money for it. But they already have. JMU already invested in a ton of money and facilities when they were making the jump from, FCS to FBS. So they knew what they were doing and they put money into it. There's other schools out there, right? Tulane invested when they brought in Willie Fritz and John Sumrall. All right. As ridiculous as it is to put athletics or football out in front, right? That's the front door to your university. I've talked about this many times on my show, going back to when I had a radio show. Maybe I've talked about it here, right? I can sit here and tell you at $10 million or whatever it was that Nick Saban was underpaid and overpaid at the same time. 10 million is a lot for a college football coach, or 15 million, or whatever Nick Saban was getting paid. The thing is, Alabama's enrollment increased 50% while he was there. They have more people from out of state coming to Alabama than they do in state. I never thought that would be the case. My former producer, Michael Bronner, he ended up going to Alabama. Whatever your reason is, his reason was 2nd and 26. That was his reason. Didn't regret it at all. And so part of this is going to be on the school. What does Georgia State want to do, right? They need to invest, because even some of the, I want to say lesser schools, right? Like ULM, they're behind the times. They know, but they're behind the times, trying to get the community in there. But all these teams in the East, right? Georgia Southern has tradition. Marshall has tradition. Old Dominion has tradition. James Madison has tradition. Coastal Carolina's tradition is relatively new. And that's relatively new, but they've had a pretty good tradition here for the last decade or so. App State has tradition. Georgia State, relatively new football program, and we've seen them win. They've gone to bowl games. They've been a solid winning program. It is tough to, compete when, you're going up against the Braves, the soccer team, the Hawks, and then you got Georgia and Georgia Tech. So it's going to be tough. I got to believe Dell McGee knew what he was getting into when he took the job. And certainly, I'm sure he's going to voice his opinion to the powers to be, saying, this is what we need. What can we get? Right. And that's the other thing. South Alabama has some of the best facilities out there. They still need, I would say, a athletics facility, right? They're still out, in the kiddie pools, icing down after practice in August. But that would presume to be the next thing for South Alabama, because they're getting a new baseball field. They're putting in turf, right? They got a great new football stadium. The Mitchell Center is fantastic. The softball field is good. They have a lot of great facilities for a group of 5 program. They just need the one more thing for the athletes. I don't know if you want to, like the Cajuns didn't separate the football team. A lot of the Power 5 ones, like LSU, probably has, their own training facility for the football team. Can't really do that when you're a group of 5. So I would presume that's the next thing that South Alabama wants to get built. But Dell McGee says the quiet part out loud, right? We can't control the fans. We got to do what we can do. We got to build up the facilities, and we got to get the players in, and we got to be on top of NIL, and then hopefully that will bring the fans out, right? Because, people will follow a winner. They really will. All right. And it's not like Georgia State hasn't won. Georgia State has won. They've gone to bowl games. But, they're trying to, rebuild on the fly, and it is it's a new era in college football. It is what it is. It seems to be changing on a regular basis. All right. Let's take a time out. When we come back, we'll run down the list because we went through the 8 teams, maybe 9 teams going bowling, and we didn't even include ODU in that. They have a little bit of a difficult schedule, but ODU could go. There's not a whole lot of major improvement for the teams that didn't play well, and we know who they are, right? All right, we will do that when we come back. Let me tell you about Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks. That makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Give yourself those priority tickets. Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. All in pricing. You get that toggling feature going, and it shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You get to see where you're sitting, get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and that lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. So we talked about what Dell McGee said, and we went through all of those, potential bowl teams. We weren't really clear on that yesterday. So let's see here. We got Georgia Southern, Marshall, James Madison, the Cajuns. So out of the 8 teams that have qualified, the 8 teams that are, that's something coming out of my eye. Of the 8 teams that are going to a bowl game for Brett McMurphy, only 4 have qualified. All right. Now, Coastal has 5 wins. Texas State has 5 wins, Arkansas State has 5 wins, and ULM has 5 wins. So those are the other teams. South Alabama's got 4, and Old Dominion's got 4. So they could still get 10 teams in. That doesn't leave a whole lot of teams that are seeking improvement. Obviously, Southern Miss already let the Fighting Will Halls go. Wishing Coach the best of luck. But you're going to have a whole new staff, and again, it's all about the quarterback. But we'll see about Troy now moving forward. Does Goose Crowder come back? He's out this year. Does he come back next year? Caldwell, does he get any better? He got better last game. Has Troy found their identity with being able to run the football? Remember, that was the identity 2 years ago. It was run the football and play defense. Passing was not good. And then it became good last season. And so Troy is 1-4. It's a bad season. 1-4 in the Sun Belt, 2-7 overall. But this is where you want to see if, again, it's not an easy schedule. Okay, this is at Georgia Southern, at the Cajuns. I'm going to guess those are going to be 2 losses. Not necessarily, but they certainly will not be favored in either one of those. You're playing the 2, division leaders right now. And then you're at home versus Southern Miss. That should be a win. But as we mentioned, do you compete? Do you make it a game? All right. And let's see who else. I mean, you got Southern Miss, you got Troy, and we did Georgia State, and the other one is App State. And we'll see if they're going to make a change. You look at the comments on the Facebook groups that I put in there, and obviously App State fans are frustrated, right? They are used to winning. And unfortunately, Sean Clark has not won a Sun Belt championship since he's been there. They say he saved his job by getting there last year, tried to give Troy all they could handle, and then, a sack fumble. It was a 1-score game, and it turned into a blowout. It turned into a blowout. So it could be wholesale changes for App. But that's where the Sun Belt is right now, right? First of all, on the Georgia State side, they may have their quarterback. That problem may be solved. Now you need an offensive line, you need more skill players, and you need a defensive line. Those are not easy to find. First to admit it, although I'm one of those guys who believes receivers are a dime a dozen. I know there's some higher end guys that are special. I'm one of those guys that thinks that they're a dime a dozen. I do. There's the oh goodness. Now I got to name the Justin Jeffersons and the Jamar Chases, and I can't think of the kid from the Rams, wide receiver from the Rams, and everybody else. That's the way I see it. So if you can develop some wide receivers, go look at the Cajuns. They had 13 players catch a ball. 9 of them were from the starter. You can find them. They're out there. The big thing is for Georgia State is to protect the quarterback and get after the quarterback. That's how you win and lose ball games. As much as I like to spread it out and put points up, let's go. If you can't protect the quarterback and you can't get to the quarterback, you can't win. All right. And those two things go hand in hand. Different positions, but those two things go hand in hand. So Georgia State has the hard part figured out. If they have the coach, they got Dell McGee. He's not going anywhere. And if Zach Gibson is the guy, you got that part figured out. Now let's build around it. All right. ULM, and we'll see what happens if Sean Clark, not ULM, Southern Miss, sorry. Even if ULM doesn't make a bowl game, right? They got to figure out, again, the offensive line started to run a little bit. They got to get better on the defensive line. And they have to come up with a passing game. All right. You can't, their first 2 ball games this year, they won. All right. And they put up, this is amazing. They put up 62 points. They beat Jackson State 30-14, and they beat UAB 32-6. Those seem like very impressive wins. All right. General Booty threw for 104 yards against Jackson State, and UAB, he threw for 87 yards. They did not combine for 200 yards in 2 games, which they scored, 66 points? 62 points. So you got to come up with a passing game, however that is. And that's probably a lot with the offensive line. All right. Because I don't think Armenta is going anywhere. Let's see here. He is a sophomore. All right. So Aiden Armenta is probably going to be back. All right. It'd be interesting to see how many wholesale changes Brian Vincent has. Did he say like 73? I presume there'll be some attrition from that. Some guys probably didn't play as much as they wanted to. That is the way it is these days. But, you got to start getting some of those high school kids in that are kind of the foundation of the program. All right. But that's where the Sun Belt is for the most part, right? Southern Miss needs improvement. Troy's got their coach. We don't know if they have their quarterback. Monroe's got their coach. I think South Alabama's got their coach. The biggest thing for South Alabama, if they don't make the postseason, is keeping their talent. All right. If you don't think people are going to, when I say people, I'm talking about NIL people and college football programs are going to come after Fluff Bothwell and Gio Lopez. All right. That's the nature of the beast. Hopefully those guys stay at South Alabama. Right. I think Arkansas State's heading in the right direction. Texas State, despite a disappointing season, heading in the right direction. The Cajuns are going to have a lot of turnover. They're going to have an extremely inexperienced quarterback compared to what they had this year. So we'll see. That's next year. Worry about that next year, right? Georgia Southern appears to be, sticking with J.C. French. Marshall's got a young quarterback. Old Dominion's got a freshman quarterback. James Madison has a young quarterback. And Coastal Carolina, I believe, has, Ethan Vasco is young as well. We'll see if Joey Aguilar sticks around at App State. Can't blame him if he leaves. We don't even know if Sean Clark is leaving yet. We shall see. But other than that, it's really Georgia State is kind of set. Southern Miss is not. We'll see what happens with App State, and Troy is set. That's pretty good out of a 14-team conference that most of your programs are heading in the right direction. Now, ULM made a coaching change last year. Troy made a coaching change last year. Georgia State made a coaching change last year. James Madison made a coaching change last year. South Alabama made a coaching change last year. So we'll see. Some guys are just in their second year. So I think the Sun Belt is in really good shape. Cajuns did look. They're going to need a lot of help. All right. I'm not sure Washington State's going to lose again. They get Oregon State in there. That's the last chance that the Cajuns have for Washington State to lose. They're ranked 18th, so they're not going to. Cajuns need some serious help to get into that playoff run. But an 11-1 regular season, and you get 12th win with your Sun Belt championship. You play a Power 5 school, Power 4 school, whatever it is. That's a really good season. All right, that's a great season. All right, let's talk some basketball. A little bit better showing by the Sun Belt on Tuesday versus some Power 4 clubs. South Alabama and Texas State almost came out victorious. We will do that after I tell you about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We're going to start looking at some college basketball games. There are some mismatches out there. Okay. Tuesday night, Texas State gave TCU all they could handle. See what the final score was. TCU went on to win 76-71. Texas State was leading at half, 37-35. TCU got out to a little bit of a lead, but then it was a 3-point game with 2 seconds left to go. TCU had a couple of free throws. So good job by Texas State competing with the Horned Frogs. That's a nice showing. Jamie Dixon still coaching, former coach of Pitt, coaching at TCU. But the Horned Frogs beat Texas State 76-71. I would tell you this game was closer than the score would indicate. Ole Miss defeats South Alabama 64-54. It was 55-52 with just under 4 minutes left to play. Ole Miss hit 5 3-pointers in the second half, 4 of them in the final 4 minutes. They made a 1-possession game a 10-point game. South Alabama missed a layup and a free throw. I don't think it would have mattered because the zone for South Alabama really kept Ole Miss from hitting their shots. And then all of a sudden they hit some open ones and they fell. South Alabama battled. Very impressive. Padula for Ole Miss led the way with 27 points. Ole Miss was missing a couple of guys. Corey for South Alabama had 14 points, and Judah Brown off of the bench hit 4 threes, 6 for 14 overall. He had 16 points. I'd like to see Barry Dunning, Mr. Basketball, I think for a couple of years. 5 points, only 2 for 7. He's 0 for 3 from 3-point land. 7 rebounds, though, and 2 assists. Again, South Alabama, a pretty good showing against the number 25 Ole Miss Rebels. Let's see what else happened on Tuesday night. James Madison bounces back after their loss to Norfolk State with a 152 win over Mary Baldwin, whatever that is. Could be one of those seasons for Old Dominion. They lose to Radford 87-75. They fell behind 44-27 at half, and Old Dominion is 0-3. Ouch. Southern Miss bounces back. They get a win over Loyola of New Orleans, 104-65. Andre Curbelo, 15 points, 6 assists. Arkansas State coming off their tough loss to Alabama. They beat rival Little Rock 80-63. Let's see who led the way there for Arkansas State. Todd had 17 points. Kobe Julian had 16, still struggling from outside, 0 for 4. You know, Brian Hodgson is going to tell him to keep shooting. But he's doing Kobe Julian things because he's 10 to 12 from the free throw line. That was the same thing he was against Alabama, I'm pretty sure. same exact effort from the free throw line. Yeah. I mean, he's 22 of 24 in the last 2 ball games against Akron. He didn't go to the free throw line very much, I should say. I mean, he is 21 of 26 free throws. That's really good. On the other side, he's a total of 3 for 18 from 3. That's not good. That's got to improve, and I'm sure that it will, right? New surroundings, new everything, new school, new teammates. Kobe Julian's a gamer, and I think he's going to get it together. But Arkansas State improves to 2-1 on the season. Rice beats Monroe 66 to 50. Monroe drops to 1-3. And we mentioned TCU and Texas State. Let's see who we have on Wednesday. The big ball game is the Cajuns are taking on number 8 Houston, and Arkansas better be careful. Scott Cross and Troy going into Fayetteville. Arkansas is ranked 18th. That's a 13.5 point favorite. Troy plus 700 on the money line. Maybe do a little bit of something there. Arkansas is 1-1. They lost to Baylor by 5, number 8 Baylor, and they struggled with Lipscomb 76 to 60. So we'll see. I'm just saying. So there are some pretty big ball games this week. We went over them before. Kind of rattled them off. Let's see what else is happening tonight. I said tomorrow, but it's actually tonight. Georgia State is at Jacksonville State. Coastal Carolina taking on NC State. So there are 3 Sun Belt basketball games where they're taking on Power 4 schools. So we'll see if someone can do an upset. And the best chance for an upset is going to be Troy. They may actually win that game. We'll put a little bit of something on that money line. 7-1 odds. Give me 13.5 points. I'm going to do something on that one. We'll see. I don't think Arkansas is all that good. We'll see. All right. Hey, we are continuing to climb. Almost 1,620 subscribers. Really appreciate everyone's efforts. Getting a lot of comments, a lot of views. Not everybody sees things the way I do. That's okay. Constructive criticism, it is what it is. So I do appreciate it. I do try to do as much as I can on both sides of the conference. I know my blind spot is the East because I've been covering the West for so long, but we do cover Georgia Southern. We were talking about Coastal Carolina. Now we're talking about Georgia State, right? I can only do what the news does and where the big wins are. And when Georgia Southern had a big win, we talked about it. When Coastal had a big win, we talked about it, right? We'll see what happens with Marshall. Unfortunately, with Marshall, they had a big loss, right? Cajuns have had a couple of big wins. Texas State had big wins before. It is a blind spot. I admit it, but we try to do it as evenly as possible. All right. Happens to be the Cajuns are the best team in the conference so far this season. That's what happens, right? Last year we did a lot of Texas State and a lot of JMU. Last year is what we were doing. That was for sure. All right. Again, thank you so much for all the support. We will be back again. We have a couple of special episodes. We'll see if we have a crossover coming up. Auburn is taking on ULM, and special documentary audio podcast of App State, Michigan has been released. So we'll see if we get the reporter that did that podcast. So stay tuned for that. We'll see if that happens this week or not. All right. Again, thank you so much. Have a great Wednesday, everybody. And we'll talk to you again on Thursday. You've been listening to Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day.